Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello. Okay, I have started the YouTube stream. If anyone's watching, I'm putting it in community, and we're just going to give it another minute or two as board members join. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Townsville. I'm in transit back to my office, leaving a union teachers meeting, but I am on my phone to answer any questions at all. But I'm heading to my office.
Awesome.
I'm in the parking lot, so I will wave to you. I am, yes, I
Oh, you're
see
here?
him. Yes, he is on the phone. I too am driving back. Same reason there was a teacher principal thing here. So there you go.
So he's co-signing that I'm here.
Yes,
Confirming.
small world.
Okay.
And good evening to Chair Fortune, who's out there somewhere too.
Again, if you are watching the live stream, we're just giving it another minute or so as board members join. I believe we're just waiting for a chair. Hold on.
Apologies. I thought Ruth would maybe do it today, but you're right. There is the board chair is also the finance chair too. But okay.
Yep, there she is. Okay. Chairperson Brody, we are streaming. The link is in community, so we are ready to start when you are. We have enough board members. And staff is here as well.
Appreciate that. Help unmuting. Hello, everybody.
Oh, yeah. I always ask to unmute if I could tell.
Yes, I was like, I didn't get to it.
Okay. All right, so we are ready to begin whenever you are.
Do we have enough folks to get started?
Yes, we do. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 board members on the call. And all the relevant staff is here as well.
Okay, so with that said, welcome everyone who is joining us for our Hartford Board of Education Finance meeting for March of 2026. I am Shantae Brody, the chair of the board. I am joined by some of my colleagues that I cannot see. I apologize, but I'm sure you'll hear from them when the engagement starts. Am I turning it over directly to Ms. Richard, our CFO?
Yeah, that works.
That was a yes?
Yes.
Yes, so I am turning it over to our CFO, Caitlin Richard, and she's going to take us through some financial information.
Good evening, everyone. So today our focus is going to be our FY26 monthly update. So those are the January financials. We'll then give an update on our FY27 budget process. We did a deeper dive last Tuesday at the workshop, so this will be higher level. And then our main feature for the evening is about expanding special education in-house programming. So we have Dr. Hoffman from special education here to talk through that piece of plans to expand more special education opportunities for students within Hartford Public Schools. So that will kind of be the main feature, but we will go over our monthly financials and an update on our budget process first. And I'll go through these two pieces and then we'll pause for any questions or discussion before we get into the special education piece. For our monthly update, there's no changes on our overall deficit update. So this is something that we have been sharing widely with lots of folks. We'll go over all the groups that we have talked to, but this is what we've been sharing about the deficit we're facing for the current fiscal year. It's about $22 million, and it's driven by the factors on this slide. We've been discussing this since October. And gave our most recent update at the February Board Finance Committee meeting, where we talked a bit about how special education tuition rates are even higher than anticipated. So no changes on this front. That number is still 22 million, and it's something we will continue to monitor as the school year goes on. The next slide just shows comparisons between this year and last year. This is in the board report we send as well. This is just the high level data. You'll see we're spending slightly higher on salaries. That is because of the lower vacancy rate. As we've been talking about, we filled a lot more positions this year and our contractual salary increases. So particularly for our teachers, we have higher salaries this year, likely what is leading to that decreased vacancy rate. Otherwise, things are largely similar to the prior year. And on a whole, we are trending pretty similar. In terms of next steps, we will keep collaborating with the city, having this conversation. As we've mentioned, we're monitoring anything we can within our locus of control on the non-salary front. And I just want to name that all of this information that we have learned this year has been incorporated into next year's budget assumptions. So all of these pieces on enrollment, vacancies, special education, all of that data is not just for this year, but we also factor it into that deficit estimate for next year. So that's the monthly piece. I'm going to now transition this into our budget process for next year. As I said, they're very connected. So the more we learn about this year, the more it informs next year. This is just the slide we've been showing on process. Today in particular, we're going to dive into this strategic resource decision piece. We're going to talk about special education in-house programming as a strategic move we are making within our own locus of control and what that could look like, to get all of your thoughts and input on that. And we'll talk a bit about our community engagement. So who have we spoken to? How has that gone? Kind of an update on that front. This is just a reminder. I know that this group has talked about it over and over, but it can't hurt to keep messaging the same thing. We have a structural deficit. It's about $45 million for next year, plus that one-time funding from the city, which is about $7.5 million. It is driven by special education tuition and door-to-door transportation. For students who don't attend our schools, you'll see a lot of legislative priorities relate to that because it's the biggest challenge that we are facing. And we've been saying that we're proposing what we need, not what we will cut. We have cut to the bone significantly over the past decade, $70 million in the past 3 years. And what we're focused on is some of those legislative advocacy solutions and then an ask to the city so that we do not need to cut into the coming year. This is the timeline. We spent a lot of time on this last Tuesday. So this is just largely what we looked at last time on the overall approach. I will say I updated our April 7th workshop. It's for the itemized list of expenditures. So that is what we are required to bring to the city. That is our full set of needs. Another update I have is that, at least according to the public website, there will be a city budget hearing. The first one is on March 31st and the second one on April 28th. So that is an opportunity for folks to attend the budget hearing for the city directly to be part of that advocacy. So those 2 dates were added. And we also just wanted to use this as an opportunity to give an update on some of the conversations we have been having. And so just to share a bit, we all last week actually continued conversations we've been having. We met with you all, with city council members, state legislatures at the Capitol, the mayor, MARB, which is the Municipal Accountability Review Board. That's the state level accountability board. And if Dr. Townsell, if you can hear us, I just wanted, if you could share a bit kind of about those conversations, your perspective, I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Can you hear me, Caitlin? If you can hear me, I think that everybody can.
Yes, we can hear you.
So here, hello, everybody. Good evening. Just like our chief financial officer shared, we've been meeting and on tour for a long time now. I believe we started conversation in October, from community forums to, as you know, ongoing finance committee meetings. Everything has been public. We've been extremely transparent. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, over the past 10 years, Hartford Public School has continuously cut, cut, cut. Over the last 3 fiscal years, $70 million cut, over 400 bodies cut. And right now, in real time, all we have left to cut is bone and foundation. And that is not, in good faith, something that I can do as a superintendent, is cut teachers from our young people and put young people in overcrowded classrooms. Not one school closure is going to close a $70 million budget. So while we're doing feasibility studies to look for efficiencies, it's not $70 million worth of efficiency. Here's the reality. The reality is, after meeting with city leaders, state leaders, testifying at legislative hearings, everywhere, and anyone who has an ear to listen has agreed that we have a structural deficit, meaning not one report that come across my desk as an incoming superintendent says any cuts would amount to that amount of $70 million. Additionally, nothing has said mismanagement of funds. Nothing has said over top heavy cuts. Nothing has said that. And I got 3 reports from the state, a Blue Ribbon report from the city, a strategic plan from our Board of Education, and everything literally points to a structural deficit. After going to the Municipal Accountability Review Board, MARB, after going there on Friday and ending our week, I've learned that even the members around MARB share that we are cutting. Only thing left to cut is bone, and that's the Accountability Review Board over the finances of the city of Hartford. So the question is, what is the plan? Well, what are you going to cut? Well, what is the plan? Well, what are you going to cut? That's not a good faith question, because there is nothing to cut. The question is, what are we going to do to survive? And here's the blessing that came out of that MARB meeting. I had the opportunity to listen to the audit given at the city, and I learned about the fund balance. And a fund balance, if you Google what a fund balance means, is rainy day fund for an emergency. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, this is probably one of the largest emergencies in the city of Hartford since its bankruptcy, whereas our back is against the wall. I learned that there is $40 million unassigned fund balance, meaning just $40 million sitting. Additionally, about $28 million of fund balance that is assigned, meaning things they like to do. Additionally, through the audit, they thought they were going to be in a deficit. However, when they closed the year, they had a $25 million surplus. So if you add all that up, you might be talking about $98 million just sitting, and we're contemplating cutting bones. In good faith, I cannot make that recommendation. I'm putting a lot on the line by standing up by myself, shouting that information without any political clout, capital, networks. I'm just working in good faith, doing what's best for the city of Hartford and its public school system. And not only am I sharing about how we're going to try to increase revenue with earning our young people back, meaning using our own resources, but also enhancing the student experience by promoting the cooperatives with our enrichment programs of sports like football, and seeing our young ladies in basketball making a run in the state championship and promoting our district. But we're also advocating for the structural deficit that we have at the state level, looking specifically at 3 priorities. For example, special education. We pay funds, $6 million, curb to curb transportation that has 0 benefit to the students, to the Hartford public school system. So all of those things are structural that I do believe will happen over time. For example, also the ECS funding being the same for the last 13 years. having that stuff level up over time, I do think that's going to occur. But in real time, we need help. And I went to MARB, the Municipal Accountability Board, and asked for help. And I said, we need all hands on deck. So if somebody said, well, where will the money come from? The state will not give that to you. My answer is, how can we utilize the fund balance that is sitting there with nowhere to go to help save and support the city? All they can say is no, but the thing is, you have to ask. And that's what I'm doing as the superintendent of Hartford Public Schools. I'm asking for an investment in the school system, whereas we will stabilize as we get the structure fixed, we get our teaching and learning fixed, climate and culture fixed, and earn trust over time. So with that, I know I said a lot, but I will park my bus and turn it back over to you, Caitlin Richard.
You did an incredible job speaking to the slides without being able to see them. So thank you. So I'll hit on a few things based on what you said, and then we're going to pause there and open it up for any thoughts, questions. So as the superintendent shared, and as you all know, we've been working on the structural piece because it is a structural problem. What you can see on the slide is our photo from the Capitol last Wednesday. So we had students come from our student leadership committee and testify. You see our board chair was there. One of our representatives, Representative Khan, was with us. And so we've been focused on the state structural piece. And as the superintendent mentioned, that will take time, but we're working on that aggressively to get as much as we possibly can at the state level for next year, and especially in future years to solve the structural problem. We've also been saying that essentially what we don't manage to get from the state this year, we'll be asking for the city to support with. And what the superintendent was talking to related to the fund balance, this was some information that we were able to learn when we went to MARB. And when we talk about our itemized list of expenditures, this is just showing that, there is money out there that could support those needs that we're putting forward. And just wanted to share this information. It is publicly available. It is part of the audit. The overall fund balance is about $74 million for the city. As the superintendent mentioned, about 48 is unassigned, so no plan for it. 26 is assigned, meaning there's a plan that may or may not have happened yet. And on that surplus portion, this did come up in MARB, which one of the MARB members asked, the city has projected a deficit before, but then they ended with a surplus on their side of the budget. That was about 25 million last year. And so the question is, what does that look like for this year if things are trending in a similar direction? So we just wanted to share with you all, we learned some of this. It's a public meeting, this is publicly available, but it's just important to know as we go into making our ask, we know we're doing the work at the state level, and then we also understand that there are resources available at the city level. As the superintendent mentioned, it's an ask. We are listing out our needs, but we just wanted to be clear kind of about this side of the equation as we go through that process. So I will pause there because then after this, we're going to get into the special education piece. Any questions or input from board members about what we just shared?
While we wait for others to potentially raise their hand, I did want to state that when I've been meeting with legislators and state Board of Ed folks, they always say, you guys run up to the state capitol, which you have the right to do, but we don't see you asking your local municipality. Like, that is an expectation that we're asking our local municipality as well. I've heard that on multiple occasions this year, engaging with state legislators and state board folks. I don't see any hands. Board Member Estrada Perez.
Hello, everyone. I am so sorry. I'm a little sick, but I just wanted to remind folks that if you haven't done so already, please make sure you're submitting testimony and getting families to submit testimony at the legislative level. We have to be able to do both. We have to be able to ask our city for additional funds in the same way that we have to be able to ask the state to address the structural issue that exists for places like Hartford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, that are really long-standing historical issues of redlining, lack of investment, and policies that were put in place many, many years ago when our great grandparents were here. to exclude us from the economic development, the home ownership that takes precedent in how we fund our public education. So we have to be able to ask our city, because that is our due diligence as fiduciary responsibilities as the board. But we also have to be, and at the same time, we have to be able to ask the state that controls the funding structure overall and how to best equitably support that. We have to be able to do that all in advance of how we're planning our budget, so that we have to be able to go to bat and be able to say, we asked, we did our fiduciary responsibility and our due diligence, and continue to build on that framework. And then when we have to make decisions we make them, but we cannot make decisions we have to make without actually doing the pre-work of being able to ask for more dollars from both of those places that have responsibility to the education of our young people. So I just wanted to name that, and also applaud the incredible work that both the superintendent and the CFO have done over the last couple of months, and in general, just making sure all of the finances are understood by this board, the community, and our legislators, and to understand where our deficit is actually coming from that structural issue, and also for being able to go out and champion, just like other districts are doing, because although there are historical contexts that makes it unique to Hartford, there's a lot going on also in other places that sort of back up the things that we're also experiencing here. So we know there's a structural issue beyond Hartford. So I know I said a lot. I just wanted to name that because I know we're in the midst of session, and I wanted to make sure we were all in the same page to continue to provide our voice and our community's voice to do this and to do this well.
Thank you for that. And I'm stalling because I am trying to pronounce board member Maddie's last name. Chayka.
Chayka, like C-H.
Chayka.
Chayka, perfect.
Board member Chayka.
And for everybody else watching. My thank yous also go out to the superintendent and Caitlin. You guys amaze me every time we run through this. Just the intricacies that you've identified, and especially the structural side of things. I guess I was just hoping you could speak a little more, and this could be any of you who are in kind of those larger meetings, as to the appetite to put some of these structural changes in place. I know the legislature, loves a good phase in where it's going to be over years and years and years, which is great if we get there eventually, but what does, next year look like? So I think just, are there certain things there's more of an appetite to perhaps phase in? Because in a way, we're kind of shifting the burden from our district to others in some states, or in some instances, or to the state itself. So just, I'm sure everybody's very mindful of how that looks, even if it's a structural deficit that we can't quite overcome just on ourselves.
Yeah, I can share the appetite piece. And you're right, they do love a phase in where they pass something and then it's, only 19% phased in. I will say the inflation adjustment to the ECS piece, I think there's a lot of momentum around that. That's what the testimony was for last Wednesday. And there was, I think, 10 different districts there with the mayors, with the superintendent, with students. And we have heard, by and large, something is going to happen on that front. It may not be the entire thing, but that something is going to happen to change the ECS formula, because every district would benefit from it. It also is an election year, right? So folks are thinking about making sure that everyone at least gets something related to education funding, because if they don't change it, there won't be any increases to state education funding. So that one we probably feel the most confident about. When it comes to fulfilling some of the special education legislation, that is a piece where that seed grant, they did only 19% fund it. And so it's probably likely they would not go to 100% next year, but we're at least trying to get that on a phase-in schedule so that every year it at least is something that is increasing. And then the last piece is, to your point, it's the thing that most impacts, it's unique to Hartford in the sense of its magnitude. So that's about the tuition that we are paying with suburban districts for special education. It is something I will say, and open to anyone else who's been in these conversations to share it. The Speaker of the House has been interested in this. I think people weren't aware the size of this issue, that it really is a $15 million gap in what we receive and what we pay for students who engage in open choice. And I will say the state did not realize the door-to-door transportation piece, that they weren't paying for it. So I will say that folks have been interested in that, and it is something that does largely impact us in particular. But I can't say for sure right now what's going to happen on that front. I do just know that especially our Hartford delegation has been interested in learning more, has followed up to ask for more data on that front, to see if there's things that we can do next year, building towards something the following year. This is the short session, so we've talked about that a bit. It's a shorter state legislative session, and next year will be the longer session. So we are trying to figure out, okay, what can we do this year that sets up the pathway for next year, bigger change happening, which is where that one-time city funding piece comes in, right? Like if we can show we're working on the structural pieces, at least on the right path, head in that direction, what is the support we need for 1 year to then do more next year in the longer session? I don't know if anyone else, I don't know, Dr. Townsell or anyone else who's been in those meetings, if you would share anything else about the appetite on this front. That was my read on it.
Caitlin, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think there's a lean in. I think it will happen over time. So we will continue to advocate at that level. But there's an emergency we have today and tomorrow, and that's the FY 26-27 budget with a deficit. And we have to ask the city for that.
I think that was questions. So we will keep it moving. So I'm excited for this part, and it's mostly going to be Dr. Hoffman sharing. So we've talked a bit about how we're planning to do more in-house special education programming. So Dr. Hoffman's going to take us through this piece. I'll chime in just with some of the financial implications, but really we want to center kind of what programs do we have right now? What are those looking like? And where might we expand to better serve more students within our district? So with that, Dr. Hoffman, I will turn it to you. I can move the slides and then you can just tap me in when it comes to some of the cost stuff.
Perfect. I wasn't sure who had the slides. All right, we can move to the next slide and probably to the next slide. And in some of these first slides we spoke about in October. So the next slide, Caitlin, really just gives an overview of where our students are right now. So we've talked about the students that we serve in district. We've talked about students that we serve in our out of district programs that are approved by the state and that we all have oversight of. And then students that attend magnet and charter schools, which we continue to be responsible for those IEPs, even though they don't attend Hartford schools. And then we've talked about choice, where we are not responsible for those IEPs. And while we may be invited to those PPTs, really don't have any decision-making power at the table. And so we continue to be concerned about those ongoing costs. We've talked a lot about our continuum of services for students that attend our in-district programs and schools. We've talked about our push-in model, which is our most inclusive for students. So students have time with typical peers. We move through that continuum where we may have students receiving services in a resource setting with options to, again, receive services in the mainstream as well. And then if students continue to need higher levels of support, we have our 4 in-district programs, our transition learning resource room, which focuses on our youngest learners, primarily K-3 right now, that might need some discrete trials part of their day, and then part of their day is in either a resource or the push-in model. We have students receiving services in our RISE programs in elementary, middle, and high school. Those students might have a need for some behavioral supports through a trauma-informed lens. We have our IGOLS program, which supports students with medical or complex neurological needs. And then lastly, our STEP program, which focuses on our transition services who are 18 years old to 22 years old and might need some either just short-term supports or long-term, then supporting them into the adult programming. And again, these are all fluid, so students can move in between different programming, different needs, depending on what's going on with them. This is just a different look at those programs that I just mentioned, the number of locations that we have, and then the max number of students that we have in those programs.
And I can do the next piece if you want. This is just kind of showing, this is for current programs. So the programs that Dr. Hoffman just mentioned, a bit of financial analysis to just say, okay, how much is this costing us? But then what are our cost savings in terms of not outplacing these students? And I think a good just rule of thumb is outplacement for a student is about $150,000 per student at this point in time. Our programs are roughly about $75,000 per student based on some of the data that we pulled. And so essentially it's half as much to be able to educate students at home. And we believe just better for students when they can stay close to home, we can serve them here, they can be in their community. But just wanted to name that if we weren't doing this, we might have $32 million more in tuition costs, which is crazy to imagine our deficit could be even worse. But I just wanted to draw that connection to what we were just talking about is these are some of the things we're doing already to try to keep more students at home. And then we'll talk a bit about how do we expand on this because it's beneficial on almost every front.
Caitlin, thank you for raising that. It is really important, I think, across the board, not only in our schools, but just on the through the special ed lens, that we really do want to make sure that we are doing the best we can to keep students in our district, in our community. We want to make sure that they are have an opportunity to be, like I said, with typical peers, ride the bus, be in different classrooms, have different experiences and different opportunities in our district schools. So it is really important that even if we are looking at a student that may need an out-of-district placement, that the conversation is always around what can we do to transition back. Well, this is a little bit of a different aspect. So what we've also sort of wanted to preview was the contracted services that we did talk about in the last budget cycle that we'll also look to really kind of pull back on for this year. So what we've had in place this year is a contract to secure speech and language clinicians that is in response to vacancies that we have across the district. And what we've done this year is have multiple conversations, and when I say we, special education team with OTM and finance, with the state to look at potentially hiring clinical fellows who need to do supervised fellowships in different districts in order to meet requirements for the state. And so a way that we're looking to reduce the number of contracted services is to potentially stipend some of our veteran speech and language clinicians of our own employees, and then they would supervise those clinical fellows for their supervision and their certification, in which time they could then become Hartford employees. So it's really a win-win. It's a reduction in that contract, which I know that we've had a lot of conversation about, and it really gives an opportunity for our more veteran clinicians to share their expertise and support newer clinicians. Another aspect of contracted services is with our board certified behavior analysts, our BCBAs. This continues to be a difficult space to fill. However, it is really important when we're talking about the transition learning resource rooms. They are supported by a contracted service. There is an element of that program that is highly specialized. And so while we continue to look for our own hires for BCBAs, we may also have to rely on current contracts, but continuing that work. And then lastly, we, OTM, Finance, and my team have worked very hard this year to really find a way to transition contracted paraeducators to become Hartford employees. This has been a focus of the work. We want to make sure that our employees are working with our highest need students, and we're not relying on contracts. So that's been in process all year and moving in the right direction.
Are we able to pause there for a question?
Absolutely.
Or do you have a slide coming for questions?
We can pause there.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Fortune?
Thank you. Forgive me, I'm on camera because I occasionally do have to chauffeur my children around for activities. My question is, I guess, primarily directed at you, Dr. Hoffman. You know, during my tenure on the board, I think some of the harshest criticisms I've gotten about our district are from parents of students with special needs. And the criticisms have ranged from the lack of services altogether, the challenges getting approved for services, and then the follow through on delivery of said services, and overall quality of the education students are receiving. So I'm pleased to hear some of the changes that you said you're implementing, at least your team is implementing, with respect to trying to hire more professionals instead of contracting out, and ensuring we have the paraprofessionals to work with students. So how else are you working to better serve the current special needs students that we have, so that we don't hear those complaints from parents and families anymore? And even within my own circle of friends, I know folks who've moved out of Hartford into different districts specifically because they have a child with special needs who was not receiving services in Hartford. Families now who are still fighting to get services for their children who've been approved through their IEPs. What are you doing to ensure that those students are still being served?
So I think the next few slides will highlight a little bit of the direction that we're moving in. But if I can just state, we're always working to ensure that students have a high quality program in whichever school they attend. So we have worked really hard in terms of, I'm going to just say speech number one, in terms of ensuring that compensatory services have been not only offered, but followed through on. That was definitely an area in which post-COVID, and then in the last probably year, we saw a very challenging time. So that is moving in the right direction. And like I said, this idea of hiring clinical fellows that are in person, that will replace our contracted virtual staff, I think would, and I know in conversations I've had with parents, really be a positive shift. I know that that virtual piece has been very challenging for many schools, for many students. So this is one way that we're looking to not only improve the programming, but also ensure that students have access to in-person staff that are highly qualified. Another way, and I'll talk more about this, but is through additional potential programming. So again, that we not only have opportunities for students who may need different level of support, but also, again, maintaining them in district where we don't have to rely on out-of-district programming.
What may I have a follow-up question. What is the universe of these fellows you think we can tap into? Like, how are they? We already know there's a lot of them locally who we can hire, and we've looked into the pipeline of like how far down that project are we, to just give me a better sense of how much we can bridge that gap.
Sure. Right now we have 5 potential clinical fellows, which would leave us, I believe, with 1 or 2 contracted speech clinicians. So the potential to hire 2 additional is very high.
How many other professionals do we have who are delivering services virtually to our special needs students?
Speech and language is the only area that we have virtual staff. So when we contract, paraeducators are in person, and the BCBAs are also in person.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, you can continue. Thank you.
Thank you. So when we've looked at different ways to expand our current programming, one is, and I'm going to start at the idea number 3, actually. The idea of expanding our STEP program, which is our transition program for students 18 to 22, I continue to say is probably the easiest place. This is just really looking at a staffing model to expand that program. When we have to transition students out, especially at 18 to 22, we really take the chance on them not being able to participate in either a work study or a work experience in their own community. And so that is one way I would really like to see us expand to ensure that we have opportunities across the district for our oldest learners, our young adults. Another aspect that we've looked at, and I've included just sort of a breakdown on each of those links that we can either go through or you can look at your leisure. But another aspect is really looking at our non-attenders. I think we've talked about this a lot across the district. And so when we have students that are PPT to attend an out-of-district placement or a different program and they're disengaged, we continue to accrue that cost. So one way to really take a look at that is building out a program for non-attenders. And there's some, again, some staffing needs and maybe some creative ways we can look at programming for those students. But that's definitely a recommendation that I have in order to address that need. And then again is we've, I think, talked a little bit about this, is expanding out an entire school for our students that currently attend EICL or STEP. Again, opening additional seats, additional programming for our students to not only possibly return from an out-of-district placement, but also ensure that there is a spot as they're moving through their grade level and their time with us in Hartford Public Schools.
And I can share a bit just on the financial end of that. And then we are, I think we have like 2 more slides after this, and can definitely then do questions and discussion. So this is just, obviously these are projections. Just wanted to give you a sense of what this looks like. So if you look at, a projected number of students, the largest being if we did create a school for EICL or STEP, what that projected cost would be based on our current estimates, based on some of our current programming, and then what we might save, again, from students not going into out-of-district placements. You see the net positive there. And so this is something I will mention that at MARB, they have brought up to us, and they actually shared examples from a particular district that made this investment. So it's an upfront investment to lead to long-term costs, which only end up benefiting our students. So it would keep more students at home and in their community. And then it would also provide us with some budget relief to reinvest back in some of our programs. So just wanted to name, we're doing some of this already, and then expanding it would cost something, of course, to start it up, but it would come with likely savings and fewer students outplaced. So that's the financial end of it. And I will name, we've heard too at the state level that if Hartford were to do something like this, it really would be supported, and this would be viewed as a long-term investment. So I think there would be support, especially at the state level, for something like this. Which that's a good transition if you want to talk about the state funding piece, Dr. Hoffman.
Sure. We have our initial seed grant, which is already sort of incorporated into our budget. So that is one aspect of funding that we've been able to utilize. There's also potentially an upcoming additional pilot grant for school year 27, which we can also utilize in terms of some of this programming. Again, like Caitlin had mentioned before, just ongoing community engagement, and then ongoing work with our legislative task force to ensure that the board, our families, community members understand the impact and how their voice can absolutely support some of the work that we are looking to accomplish. I think that's, yep. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation, much appreciated. Do we have any questions, Mr. Mills?
Yes. Hello there, everybody. So the conversation that you mentioned this a little while ago when you guys were showing the numbers. And all of that makes sense if we don't send people out of district or to outplacement. How much of a say do we have in that, like, versus parents? Like, how much of that is a thing that, like, we would actually be able to do as opposed to parents still choosing to send their kids out? I'm not sure if I asked that correctly, but I hope you get the gist.
Nope, I completely understand that. Of course, I'm going to always say this is a PPT decision, but the likelihood of us being able to maintain students in district when we have available seats and available programming is high. So generally when we're at the table, that is usually the first question. When we're moving in this direction, with a family or with a guardian, when a student requires a higher level of support. And the first question is always, is there an in-district program and is there a seat?
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Fortune?
Thank you. My question is related to creating the new programs as well. I would imagine there are some really good grants available for essentially seed money for developing new programs, just like we have for, say, some of the magnet schools. I forget the term, like redesigning or developing new themes or retheming. I just wanted to name that. I would like that explored as we do that, because I think state support can also mean one-time financial support, and likely that there are grants out there that can support some of these endeavors, particularly if we're being creative and opening up programs to serve students.
Thank you for lifting that. Caitlin and I have been in conversation regarding different ways to secure some grants.
Thank you. And it was
Thank you.
some, there was in Miriam Khan's special education bill last year, it was written into the bill, some opportunities for that. Yeah.
Yes, and there's two pieces. There's the seed grant, which we've talked about, but there is going to be a separate grant starting next year that is competitive that we can apply and say, here's our plan for the programming, and then get additional funding. So yes, that will be a thing too for next year.
You're all set, Ms. Fortune?
Just one follow-up question. I don't recall where we left off with, I know we used to have a grant application person, and we did not have that role. And I believe the Public Works audit recommended that we fill that role. Where are we on that role? Did we end up finding someone specifically to just sort of pursue these grants and help write the applications for them? Or is this still a vacancy or something we've sort of allocated among multiple people who serve in other capacities?
So we don't currently have a person. However, I've been talking with the city budget director. So this is an example of some good collaboration. They have capacity on their team to help search for grants, like do the actual grant searching and writing. So we actually have multiple meetings set up this week and next week to talk budget stuff, but we're going to talk about that in particular because they think they actually have capacity to support us with some of that. So I think it's a place to start because they have someone whose job this is. And one of the things we talked about is that if we can frame things as broader than just the school district, obviously it's for the school district, but impacting kind of the community of Hartford, there might be more things we can go after. A lot of times there's federal grant or private foundations, that type of thing. So that's the status on that front. So I can give more details, but we're actively working together to have them support us in the capacity on that front. We do have a manager of grants, but she's more focused on the management of the grants we do have. This would be for seeking new opportunities.
So, sorry, so just to be clear, the city has one person who currently does that. And the idea is we would try to get that one person to also help the district with seeking grants and writing grant applications.
Yes, and they said they had capacity. So yes, I think we start there and see what that capacity looks like. And that's what some of my meetings will be about.
Okay. I mean, I think that's good. I guess my sort of thought is I've served on boards of nonprofits that are statewide with smaller budgets than this district, tens of millions, but not nearly $500 million. And they've had more than one person for grants. So I guess, I'd be curious how much capacity it really means, but it just seems like it's a position that potentially could bring more money in the door. So just food for thought.
No, I think it's worth having the initial just to see. And I will name some of our budget software also helps identify some grant opportunities, like putting them on our radar. But agree, I think we remain open to if we think there's more capacity we need beyond that, but we'll start there and then see if we need additional.
Okay, you're all set, Ms. Fortune, for now?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Daryl Stowe Ledger?
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the presentation thus far. This is a lot of great information, but I wanted to just put it out there that, you know, when we are looking at perhaps having perhaps a redesigned school or a theme, that we have to remind ourselves and remember that we are not we don't have a clinical day school. We are not a therapeutic school. We don't have therapeutic schools. If we're looking to create a therapeutic school or a clinical day school, then that's a whole other conversation to have. But there are students who definitely need out of placement, you know, education, environments, so that they get what they need, so that they are, they remain safe, so that the whole child is educated and safe as well, and that they are comfortable around their peers, and they're productive and they thrive. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't want to see us try to keep kids in the district to save money. Yes, we do need to save money. Yes, we do need to close that huge gap that we have. But I just want us to be mindful in not overstepping and, looking at, saying, well, do we have a say? Because we don't have a say in what an IEP states or recommends. Looking at getting our kids back, who perhaps don't have IEPs, or who, who don't require a higher level of care, if you will. I'm all in support of that, but I just want to be very, very careful in not overstepping and trying to have students who require and who really benefit and thrive in out of district, placements, because it's a therapeutic program, or it's a clinical day program. That's all I have to say.
I'll add that Ms. Daryl Stowe Ledger, I don't know if you weren't at our budget workshop last week, but it was made clear, and it has been made clear in a couple other instances, that we are not on a mission to bring kids back for the sake of saving money. We are trying to build our programming, and if we're lucky enough to get staffing to provide a service for our students, that is what we're aimed to do, no matter what that service is. If we can provide that service, we aren't looking just to create things that are half done and half staff. We are actually, under the leadership of the superintendent, looking to build quality programs so that we can provide those to our students. So we aren't looking to solve a budget problem with just bringing kids back for the sake of bringing them back. It's totally focused on, from everything I've heard and from all the meetings that I've had in conversations with the staff and the superintendent, is to have quality programming and bring them back to quality. Even kids that are not in special ed, like you don't have a special need. All of our focus is on is being more attractive with the programming that we offer. So that's what I've been getting from all the conversations I've been having with staff and the superintendent.
Thank you for that clarification. But yes, I don't believe that, I would never suggest or, imply that we're looking to just bring kids back just for the sake of bringing kids back, but for public consumption, I do need to say, I do need to reiterate that point.
Thank you. Dr. Hoffman?
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate that. Building out the programs has to be an intentional focus, and it's not something that we can just rush into. That's one piece. And the other piece is there will be students that do require a different program that we will not be able to provide. And so there will still need to be space for students to have an opportunity to attend, like you're saying, a clinical school or a higher level of support that we just either don't have the staff for or that we're just not equipped to support. And that's okay. But I just want to make sure that it's on this continuum of services that we have in place. It's expanding, but we have to be intentional and we have to do it the right way in order to support all students.
Thank you for that. Are there any more questions? Did we have something else we were going into?
We
No.
don't. This is actually shocking.
Sorry,
but
I do
we
have
might
one
end
more.
early for perhaps the first time.
Sorry, I
Go
do
ahead,
have
Ms.
one more question.
Go ahead, Ms. Fortune.
Okay, so because we're not involved in a lot of students' IEPs, so we don't necessarily know what type of services they're receiving when they're out of district. Do we have the data to be able to see what are the most highly sought after services that students are receiving out of district to inform which specific areas within special education we choose to invest in? Because I would imagine it would be most effective to go after gaining students back in areas where there's a larger volume of students, because it would just be, one, we'd be able to build a capacity and deliver quality education in a sustainable way to them. Do we have that information or a way of ensuring we get access to that?
Right now, my team is working. Oh,
Nope, I was just saying, go ahead, Dr. Hoffman.
thanks. Right now, my team is working on getting that data for all students in district, all of the Hartford students that are currently outplaced by Hartford, as well as Magnet and Choice. Choice is a little bit more challenging to obtain, but we are working on getting that information. We typically, and this is overall, the highest disability category we see students requiring services is in autism. And so that's why when we've built out these transition learning resource rooms, it's a focus on either students that are not yet identified that may be moving in that direction, or students that are identified that we know will require more specialized instruction.
Okay, so it's good that that's being considered, because I think it will just help us make smarter decisions as to how we invest in special education. The other question I have is a little bit more specific, but I think this is the right time to ask. When a parent has a child with an IEP, I recently learned that that parent, if they have the means and the district is struggling to provide the support, they could bring on their own paraprofessional for their child. But apparently the school also can terminate that paraprofessional or discontinue that paraprofessional for the student, even if the parent is bearing the cost. Can you tell me why and how that works? It just seems counterintuitive to me.
So that's not a practice in Hartford. We hire our own paraeducators, and it would have to be a PPT decision. And so I'm not familiar with that practice in Hartford. But at the most basic level, it would be a PPT decision and not in the district hiring.
Okay, maybe I'll follow up with you offline, because I literally have a classmate of one of my children who had a paraprofessional paid for by the parents, who somehow was discontinued by the school, and the school has yet to provide a replacement who is as well trained and qualified as the parents were paying for. And that's very concerning because, again, that's another family that is wondering, will Hartford meet their child's needs? And it is concerning.
I would like to, continue that offline.
Yes, I was saying that sounded familiar, but I think I was in conversation with you, Ms. Fortune, about that. I was like, I know that story. I think
No, that's a parent who came to testify. She happens to be a
Yeah.
neighbor, but yes, she came and testified that her child's para was discontinued, not by her, but by the school.
my understanding of that was that she had the means to pay, but I didn't understand that she was actually paying at the time.
She was
that-
actually paying for the para who her son had and then was forced to let go of that person without a replacement being guaranteed. And then a replacement who was not as well trained as the person she was privately paying for.
Okay. So I'm thinking all board members here want to follow up on that, on that situation to understand that better.
Yes.
Ms. Darastel Ledger?
Thank you. Yeah, that story did sound familiar. But the question I have is for Caitlin, Ms. Richard, if some of these grants perhaps that you're looking at or that are coming up, is there anything that would perhaps fund a Montessori high school in the district, or expanding Montessori in Hartford Public Schools, so that it's, specifically for Hartford, children in Hartford, as opposed to having children from out of Hartford come in?
I have not seen anything specific about that, but we can keep our eyes out because, to your point, the Montessori schools are magnet schools right now. So largely it would be magnet funding or through the reformulation that we talked about. But that's something we can definitely put on our radar.
Thank you.
But isn't that reformulation, that's not to create a school? Reformulation is you have a school. It's really retheming. And another magnet operator I won't name does that often. Like you think it's a new school and you're like, oh, that's the old big picture, or that's the old this school. So families think, oh wow, this new school, but it's just the same school under a different name, and they call it reformulation.
That is true. It is just reformulating. And so, that's the only type, that's the major form of funding a magnet school could get. But there isn't anything equivalent for starting a new school or a neighborhood school right now from the state. So we'd have to look more broadly.
I think what we were saying, the funding for the grants were specific to special education.
Yes.
Yeah, it was specific to that. Those were the grants that we were referring, that was in Miriam Khan's bill last session, that is to be available now. And I think our Annie Fisher STEM is doing applying for reformulation. I believe we discussed.
Yes, they're the one school that has gotten confirmed they will get the money for the reformulation.
Okay, no hands up. We're gonna give folks back some of their time. Going once, going twice. Thank you all for joining us for our March 2026 Finance and Audit Committee meeting of the Hartford Board of Education. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a nice night.